Billy Crystal once held up a skull on stage and said, "This is Uick's skull. This is the skull of Uick." It was a strange, darkly funny moment, the kind of joke that only someone with deep timing and courage could deliver. Billy Crystal built his entire career on impressions, sharp observations, and fearless roasts. Over the years, he joked about almost everyone and everything. He pushed boundaries, sometimes too far, and even faced major backlash, including criticism for using blackface in a 2012 Oscar segment. Yet through all of the controversy and noise that followed him, there was one person he never joked about. People in the industry noticed it. Producers encouraged him. Writers begged him to use it as material. Audiences wondered why. Billy Crystal refused every single time. Then, during the 1991 Academy Awards, cameras captured a moment that was never meant to be seen by the public. It was quiet, emotional, and deeply human. That brief moment explained everything. Years later, in 2021, Billy Crystal finally spoke openly about the truth in a film he dedicated to that person. The grief never faded, and once the story became clear, it was obvious why he could never turn that loss into a joke. Billy Crystal was born into a world already filled with sound, rhythm, and creativity. He came into the world on March 14, 1948, at Doctors Hospital in Manhattan. The noise around him was not ordinary city noise. It was music, laughter, conversation, and stories being created in real time. His father, Jack Crystal, managed the Commodore Music Store, a legendary place in New York City. It was not just a store. It was a gathering place. Jazz musicians would stop by, jam sessions would suddenly form, and music legends would casually walk through the door. Artists like Billie Holiday and Gene Krupa were not distant idols to Billy. They were real people he saw with his own eyes. While other children were still trying to understand the world, Billy was standing close enough to feel the energy shift when a legend entered the room. By the time he was 5 years old, Billy was already meeting major jazz figures. When the family later settled in Long Beach, New York, the music did not disappear. It became even more central to his life. His uncle, Milt Gabler, founded Commodore Records, often described as the first independent jazz label in the United States. Later, Gabler joined Decca Records, placing him at the heart of the music industry. This meant Billy was not only listening to music, he was watching how it was made, promoted, and performed. At just 7 years old, he watched his uncle help produce Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley, a song that helped define an era. He also saw legends like Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald up close. These were not just exciting memories. They quietly taught him how entertainment worked, how timing mattered, and how personalities filled a room. At family dinners, Billy began mimicking radio disc jockeys. He did it to make people laugh, not knowing he was practicing skills that would later define his career. He was learning rhythm, timing, and the power of voice without realizing it. Each laugh from a family member felt like a signal that he had something special. Broadway entered his life early as well. In 1955, when Billy was 7 years old, his father was involved in promoting the musical Guys and Dolls. Billy attended the show with his family, and it left a deep mark on him. He did not simply enjoy it and move on. He carried the excitement home with him. Later, at a family gathering, he surprised everyone by doing an impression of the show's composer, Frank Loesser. His older brothers were embarrassed, but the moment revealed something important. Billy was not afraid to perform, even if the room judged him. The show itself went on to become a huge success, running for hundreds of performances and winning multiple Tony Awards. For Billy, what mattered most was how alive it made him feel. That rush stayed with him. Life, however, does not protect talent from pain. In 1963, tragedy struck when Billy's cousin Joel died at the age of 32 from cystic fibrosis. Billy was still young, and grief is confusing at that age. He did not know how to process the loss, so he did what felt natural. He turned the pain into something he could control. He began organizing small neighborhood talent shows. He was not chasing fame. He was trying to survive emotionally. He needed laughter, light, and connection during a dark time. Later in life, he said humor became his shield. Those small shows taught him that laughter cannot fix everything, but it can help people get through hard moments. By 1968, Billy graduated from Nassau Community College with an associate degree in theater. He performed wherever he could. Temple events became his training ground, and one impression stood out above the rest. His impression of Sammy Davis Jr. won him a small prize of $25. It also brought controversy, with some people feeling the performance crossed a line. Billy took that criticism seriously. Looking back, he admitted it taught him important lessons about respect and sensitivity. Still, that small prize mattered. It was proof that his talent had value, even in a modest way. That same year, at just 20 years old, Billy took a bigger risk. He performed at the Bitter End in Greenwich Village, a famous venue that had hosted artists like Bob Dylan and Joan Rivers. Billy stepped on stage and delivered a sharp 10-minute set about his Jewish family. The audience pushed back at times, but he did not retreat. He fired back at hecklers with quick wit. It was raw and honest. Around this time, he was also building his personal life alongside Janice Goldfinger, who would later become his wife. While studying at Hofstra University, they created improvisational comedy routines together and performed them at open MIC nights. One routine about dating a quirky girl from Philadelphia became popular among students and helped spread his name. In 1970, Billy earned his theater degree from New York University and faced a major decision. He had the option of a stable teaching job. It was the safe path. Instead, he chose comedy. He chose uncertainty. At one point, he even performed impressions outside Carnegie Hall to earn money and exposure. It may sound strange, but it showed his determination. He wanted to earn every step with his own voice. By 1972, he joined an improvisational group on Long Island. Not everything worked right away. One impression, a lisping take on Liza Minnelli, was met with silence. That kind of silence hurts deeply for a performer. But Billy stayed with it, reworked the material, and eventually turned it into a successful routine. He earned his first paid gigs at $50 per show. It was not glamorous, but it was real progress. Over 4 years, the group performed in coffee shops and college venues, giving Billy space to experiment and learn how to read different audiences. In 1973, during a show at a Catskills resort, a drunk audience member began heckling him. Billy responded with a spontaneous roast that included an impression of Muhammad Ali's speech pattern. The situation nearly turned into a fight, but it also cemented his reputation as a fearless improviser. He could seize a moment and turn chaos into comedy, even when it was risky. That same boldness followed him onto television. In 1977, Billy took on the role of Jody Dallas on the sitcom Soap. At the time, Jody was one of the first recurring gay characters on primetime television. It was a huge risk. LGBTQ+ representation was rare, and often treated as a joke. In 1978, an episode aired where Jody considered transitioning, and the backlash was immediate and intense. Billy received death threats. Hate mail poured in. ABC increased security and cancelled promotional appearances for safety reasons. Despite the fear, Billy did not back away. Instead, he leaned in and worked harder to portray Jody as a real person. He improvised much of the dialogue, helping the character feel human rather than exaggerated. The controversy continued in 1979 with an episode in which Jody married a woman while dressed in drag. Network executives demanded major cuts. Conservative groups protested nationwide. Some TV stations refused to air the episode at all. Advertisers were pressured. The reaction was loud and angry, but the show's ratings increased, proving audiences were ready for challenging stories. Behind the scenes, tensions also rose. Billy clashed with co-star Katherine Helmond over changes to the script that made Jody feel less authentic. The argument was intense and lasted a long time, but the result was a stronger season. Ratings jumped, and producers adjusted the writing to honor both actors' concerns. Billy learned that fighting for truth in a character could be painful but worthwhile. After Soap ended, Billy faced rejection again. He appeared on Saturday Night Live in 1980, but one of his sketches was cut before airing. He was devastated. Still, he kept going. When the sketch was later reworked and aired, the character Fernando became a hit. That pattern followed him throughout his career. Doors closed, but he found other ways in. At the same time, his personal life was under strain. His role on Soap caused tension with some Orthodox Jewish relatives. In 1978, some family members refused to attend Thanksgiving dinner, accusing him of bringing shame to the family. The pain was deep, and Billy turned it into comedy, joking in a stand-up special about coming out straight. The laugh was real, but so was the hurt behind it. When Billy joined Saturday Night Live during a shaky period for the show, no one knew what would work. In 1984, he introduced Fernando during Weekend Update and ended the segment with the line, "You look marvelous." The phrase took off instantly. Fernando became a recurring character, and Billy improvised celebrity interviews live on air without cue cards. The performances felt risky and alive, helping steady the show during a difficult era. His time on SNL was not easy. Early sketches were cut, including one that left him close to quitting. But those disappointments led to growth. By the mid-1980s, Billy was shaping the show's tone and winning awards for his writing. He pushed boundaries, faced complaints, and dealt with backstage tension, but his instincts proved strong. Through all of this success, one loss remained untouched. One person was never turned into a punchline. Years later, when Billy finally spoke about it openly, it became clear that some grief runs too deep for jokes. Comedy had always been his shield, but even shields have limits. Crystal matched him beat for beat, never falling behind for a second. That exchange did not feel like an ending at all. It felt like the beginning of something deeper, the start of a friendship that would last for years and quietly shape both of their lives. From that point on, Billy Crystal's career outside of Saturday Night Live began to move in sharp, unexpected directions. His first major film role came in 1978 with Rabbit Test, a strange and risky movie where he played a man who becomes pregnant after a science experiment goes wrong. Audiences were shocked, critics disliked it, and many did not know what to make of it. Still, the film made around $4.7 million on a budget of about $1.5 million. It was odd, chaotic, and impossible to forget. It was also the only movie ever directed by Joan Rivers, and it was shot in just 21 days. Crystal committed fully to the role, even during a now infamous birth scene involving a vacuum cleaner. Years later, the film gained cult status, and people noticed that Michael Keaton's first film appearance was hidden inside it as well. In 1984, Crystal briefly appeared again as Morty the Mime, this time in This Is Spinal Tap. He was uncredited, silent, and paid only a small bonus. He did not speak a single word, yet his exaggerated movements and quiet mockery of the band became one of the most memorable moments in the entire film. Without dialogue, he still managed to steal the scene. It was clear proof that his sense of timing did not rely on words alone. Then came Running Scared in 1986, where Crystal played a stressed and troubled Chicago police officer who turns to cocaine. The role surprised many people because it was darker and more intense than what audiences expected from him. During one chase scene, he performed his own stunts and ended up breaking his ankle. Production had to stop while he recovered. As soon as he could, he returned to finish the film. The movie went on to make over $38 million worldwide on a relatively small budget. The pain he experienced during filming stayed visible on screen and made his performance feel raw and real. It showed how far he was willing to push himself physically to serve a role. A year later, Throw Momo from the Train allowed him to stretch even further. Playing Larry Donner, Crystal improvised more than 20 different ideas for how his character might commit murder. Some were too violent and were cut, but others remained in the final film. Director Danny DeVito gave him the freedom to explore, and that looseness became the heart of the movie. The comedy felt alive because much of it truly was created in the moment. That same year, The Princess Bride nearly lost him. The heavy Miracle Max makeup caused a severe allergic reaction, swelling his face so badly that producers briefly considered replacing him with Robin Williams. Crystal refused to quit. He pushed through the pain and discomfort. The scenes were so funny that the cast struggled to stay in character. Mandy Patinkin even bruised a rib trying not to laugh. Hours of footage had to be cut, but what remained became some of the most quoted moments in the film's history. Then came When Harry Met Sally in 1989. During casting, director Rob Reiner briefly considered Tom Hanks for the role. But when Billy Crystal walked into the room, he sounded exactly like Reiner himself. Recently divorced, anxious, and honest, Crystal felt like the character already. The connection was immediate. Behind the scenes, Crystal helped shape the script, adding material without credit and testing scenes during rehearsals. The famous deli scene took 65 takes. Meg Ryan committed fully, and the tension in the room was intense. Crystal felt the moment needed one last push and suggested the line, "I'll have what she's having." It was improvised, and it changed the scene forever. The film earned $92 million, received 3 Oscar nominations, and became a classic. Crystal later turned down a sequel because he feared it would weaken the ending. He always trusted moments that felt real, even if they were not planned. That belief carried into City Slickers in 1991. The famous speech about finding your one thing was never written in the script. It came from real conversations. Crystal and Jack Palance had spent late nights talking about aging, regret, and feeling lost. Palance carried those thoughts with him onto the set. When the camera rolled, he looked at Crystal and spoke from the heart. The crew went silent. You could feel the weight of the moment. Crystal later said the power of the scene came entirely from Palance himself. The film cost $17 million to make and earned more than $130 million worldwide. Palance won an Oscar, but years later, people still talk about that scene because it feels like someone telling you the truth when you least expect it. That search for honesty guided Crystal when he directed his first film, Mr. Saturday Night, in 1992. He chose to play Buddy Young Jr. from age 30 all the way to 80. He refused shortcuts. Every day involved heavy prosthetics that sometimes took 12 hours to apply. His skin broke out, infections followed, and the weight of the makeup exhausted him. He joked that his head felt like it weighed 9 pounds. The crew watched him struggle, but he never backed away. The film earned respect for how real his transformation felt and showed how much he was willing to suffer to make a character believable. The same instinct shaped Forget Paris in 1995. The story was inspired by mistakes from his own honeymoon, including losing his wallet years earlier. He kept rewriting scenes to make them feel true to life and pushed for reshoots. Those decisions raised the budget to around $30 million. Crystal did not care. He wanted marriage to look imperfect and real, not idealized. He even included real NBA players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and David Robinson to ground his role as a basketball referee. The film stood out because it focused on what happens after romance fades. By the time Analyze This arrived in 1999, Crystal was still chasing depth beneath the comedy. To build the relationship between his therapist character and Robert De Niro's mob boss, the two actors attended real therapy sessions together. They were not acting. They talked honestly. De Niro opened up about fears he rarely shared. Filming paused for 2 weeks, and no one complained. What came out of those sessions showed up on screen. The movie made over $160 million worldwide and proved that real emotion could lift comedy into something lasting. Even animation pushed him to extremes. For Monsters Incorporated in 2001, Crystal recorded Mike Wazowski's voice in nearly 300 sessions. He screamed and strained his voice until his vocal cords cracked. Doctors warned him to stop or risk permanent damage. Pixar later had to digitally repair parts of his performance. The film earned over $560 million worldwide, and Mike became an unforgettable character. Few people knew how much Crystal's body paid for that role. Hosting the Oscars became another major test. In 1990, at just 41, Crystal hosted for the first time without a safety net. He relied on instinct, speed, and impressions. His opening monologue included 15 impersonations. When he spoofed Tom Cruise from Top Gun, the audience laughed for minutes, and Cruise played along. That night changed his career and led to him hosting the Oscars 9 times. But those stages also carried risk. In 2012, he performed a Sammy Davis Jr. parody using blackface. The backlash was immediate and intense. Thousands of complaints flooded in. Critics said comedy had crossed a line. Sammy Davis Jr.'s daughter defended Crystal, saying her father would have approved, but the moment still marked a turning point. Crystal later admitted the bit was out of touch and said comedy had become a dangerous space to navigate. That honesty likely ended his time as an Oscar host. People often forget how deeply Crystal cared about others. During the 1991 Oscars, when Robin Williams went off script in an emotional moment, Crystal stepped in instinctively and grounded him. Williams later said that moment helped him during a dark period. Their friendship ran deep. When Williams died in 2014, it left a quiet wound that never fully healed. Work continued. In 2004, Crystal voiced Calcifer in the English version of Howl's Moving Castle. The style worried the studio at first, but the director trusted Crystal and allowed long, energetic recording sessions. In 2005, Crystal faced a lawsuit from his longtime manager over unpaid earnings. He settled out of court for about $1 million, a reminder that even successful careers carry risks. When Monsters University was released in 2013, Crystal fought to keep scenes showing Mike doubting himself. Pixar had cut them, but Crystal insisted they mattered. The scenes were restored and later praised for adding emotional weight. In 2014, Crystal stood alone on Broadway with 700 Sundays, telling his life story through memories and photos. At the center was his father, Jack, who died suddenly when Billy was just 15. The eulogy scene left audiences silent and emotional. The show won a Tony Award and earned millions, proving Crystal was more than a comedian. He was a storyteller unafraid to reopen old wounds. That grief followed him into Here Today in 2021, where he played a widowed writer shaped by loss. The film mirrored his mourning for Robin Williams. Some scenes were so personal they brought cast members to tears. Crystal dedicated the film to Williams and admitted he kept his last voicemail for years. Family always stayed close. He married Janice Goldfinger in 1970. Their marriage nearly ended a few years later due to distance and touring, but they renewed their vows in Las Vegas in 1975, with an Elvis impersonator officiating. That moment saved them. More than 54 years later, they were still together. His daughters shaped him as well. Jennifer directed a documentary that forced him to confront painful family history tied to the Holocaust. Lindsay later led a family intervention when Crystal was burning himself out, afraid of dying young like his father. Therapy changed him. He slowed down. By late 2024, Crystal admitted hosting the Oscars had aged him deeply. He declined future offers for health reasons. His wealth was significant, but money never defined him. What remains is quieter and more lasting. A man who trusted real moments, chased truth even when it hurt, and understood that what matters most is what stays with you after the spotlight fades.